Welcome, everybody, to the Big Sky Now podcast from the Daily Interlake and Hagedon Sports Network. I am your host, Josh Amick. As always, on my panel, we got Mark Nelke, Ian Bivona, Fritz Neighbor, and John Allen. So thanks again for joining us again on this Monday. So let's get right into it. We had a week 0 kickoff last week. Montana State was down 17 points at one point, and they erased that deficit and came back to win in the final 10 seconds. They rushed for over 362 yards as a team, which is something we talked about last week. We expect them to be a run-heavy dominated team. But what are some other things that stood out to you guys in that game? Let's start with you, Mark.
Well, I think that what jumps out is, they should have lost. New Mexico did everything to win the game and then for most of the game and then everything to lose it at the end. They missed 2 field goals. One was almost out of bounds, and then the 2 third down conversions that the wide receivers dropped the ball. Either of those would have kept the drive alive. And I can't remember, the second one might have ended the game basically as far as the clock goes. But anyway, you talk about the coaches like to say now, winners, kids make winning plays. Winning teams make winning plays. Losing teams apparently make losing plays, and that's kind of what they did. But credit Montana State. They were the better team overall, and at the end they found a way to win. I think Adam Jones is he still running? He might be still running after that 93-yard run.
Yeah. All right, Ian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, Mark mentioned a couple of things I was going to mention, but I'll flip it into giving credit to the Montana State defense there and flipping that first half performance into the second half. I think it was around 250 total yards they allowed in that first half, and then around like 120 in that second half. Just the changes there, obviously getting it done late down the stretch, last 3 drives, like 12 yards allowed by New Mexico. That obviously allowed Bobcats to get back in it. So credit to that Montana State defense for turning that around in that second half there.
I know me, Fritz, and John were all at the office watching the game together. So, Fritz, you were kind of chuckling to yourself during that final end towards the game. What were your thoughts going in that final fourth quarter?
Yeah, well, I was thinking all along that it's too bad that MSU gave up a couple scooping scores because the defense is playing well enough to win, and they just gave up 2 defensive touchdowns. So now they're down 17, once Adam Jones broke that long one, I thought, oh, these guys might be in trouble, meaning the Lobos. And same thing that Mark said. They haven't been a winning program for a long time. Bronk Mendenhall has some serious work to do. Even on that first touchdown pass that the Bobcats threw, man, was that a miss assignment. Guys were wide open, and on the Adam Jones play, there was just nobody within yards of him in that hole through the left side. People getting out of gaps. People are making mistakes, getting taken off the field. New Mexico's got a ways to go, but the Cats can really run the ball. They got the speed. I think, really the game switched when Tommy Mellott scored on that 15-yard run. It looked like a broken play, and then Adam Jones wanted to kind of springing him in a scramble play and made a key block, and Mellott gets 15 yards up the sidelines for a touchdown, and then it just seemed from that on the Cats had momentum, and good on them.
Okay. John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, just Montana State's ability to kind of stick to their game plan. Yes, they did change up a little bit, but I think that they've got to be very excited just to see how their players react to a situation where 2 times in the game they're down 17 points and to be able to claw it back both times.
Yeah, I think one of the key things that I noticed was we all kind of mentioned it was the lack of discipline really from New Mexico with not only mixed field goals, but they go for it on that third down. Wide receiver drops a pass. It's a little bit thrown behind though, but it's a play that you should be making at that kind of level. And then Montana State gets the ball and goes right down and scores. But I thought one of the other key factors was just the play from Mellott. I thought he looked completely different in that second half. I know that they did still run the ball like they want to, but he was escaping the pocket, making some plays that I don't think were even available in that first half. So credit for the whole Montana State team just keeping their composure and sticking to what they know. So in that kind of game where the team, Montana State, opens up at 8-point favorites, they close as 13.5-point favorites. They win the game in the final seconds, had a couple scoop and scores. A bunch of things went wrong and a bunch of things went right. Do you think that kind of win builds character for Montana State, or is it kind of like cause for concern, knowing that you were such heavy favorites, but barely escaped New Mexico with the win? What are your thoughts on that, John?
I mean, I think in that sort of game, of course, you want to always get the win regardless. But when you go into a game against an FBS program as an FCS program, you're playing with house money. You're getting the paycheck regardless for it. So for them to be able to put themselves into these situations that they might see later on in the postseason or late in the season in Big Sky play is going to be a real help for them. It's stuff that you can't simulate in practice. Being down 17 points, trying to lead that comeback. You can put the situation in practice, but you're never going to do it with the opposing crowd being louder. You're never going to do it with that whole situation actually playing out. So I think it's just really good help for them down the line. And to be able to come away with the win is just an even greater plus from it.
I want to touch back on something you just mentioned. Speaking on that paycheck, I know you gave us the number after they played. What was that number that Montana State got paid to play this game?
Yeah, they got $360,000 to play that game.
That's great for the school. All right, Mark, what are your thoughts on how that game finished out for Montana State?
I think the answer to both your questions is yes. The first half is kind of cause for concern the way they played to get down so far, but does it build character? Yeah, that also to go on the road and win a game no matter who you're playing and to play as well as they did in the second half is obviously good momentum going to this week to finally play like Montana State can play. I mean, it would have been devastating to lose that game the way they played for most of it, but to pull it out, that almost, hopefully, for a lot of people that covers up their sins early, but hope, coaches will see what they did in the first half and say, hey, we got to correct that down the line.
Yeah. Fritz, what are your thoughts?
Well, I listened to a little bit of Brent Vigen's press conference today, and he's obviously pleased that they got the win despite how things went for part of that game, and I think any team goes in or comes out of a week 0 or week 1 game with plenty of things to fix. And he admitted the Bobcats are there. They have lots of things to fix, but to come out of that with a win is a big old vat of gravy. So credit to the Cats for doing that, and it's nowhere. It's really a lot of room for improvement. Nowhere to go but up, even though they just came off a win.
Yeah. Ian, close us out.
Yeah, kind of same opinions as everyone else. I think it's definitely good to get a win. Anytime you can get a win, that's obviously good for your program and very exciting. But there's definitely going to be some things to take away. I'm not overly too concerned, though. I mean, I don't know how many times Montana State is going to give up 2 defensive touchdowns in the same game. That was obviously the key factor that kept New Mexico really in that one. And I mean, it's week 0. You're playing a week earlier than everyone else, 1 week less of practice time in the off season. So I'm not too overly concerned with their performance. And I mean, they're on the road against an FBS team.
All right. So looking forward to this week. We are officially back, boys. We are in week 1 where we'll have a full slate of games. I'm so excited for that. But I want to do a deeper dive into the games that we have coming up first, which is the Thursday games. We got Monmouth against Eastern Washington, and then we have Sacramento State versus San Jose State, a couple of battle teams just right down the street from each other. How do you think these two Big Sky teams stack up against their opponents? Ian, let's start with you.
Yeah, and I'll start with the Eastern game. The big thing I'm going to be looking at is how Eastern's run defense is going to perform. That's been a really big issue for them each of the last 2 years. It's been a huge contributing factor into both of those losing seasons. When I was at Big Sky Media Day talking with Eastern players and coaches, the big thing it's been the focus each of the last 2 years now really has been that run defense. It's all they've talked about throughout the summer. And it's really kind of, like I said earlier, it's really been the key factor in both these past losing seasons. And Monmouth's been able to run the ball, just kind of looking at their stats from last year. So that's going to be the key matchup that I'm keeping an eye on in that game, at least.
All right. Fritz, what are your thoughts on the Monmouth Eastern Washington game?
I don't have a whole lot of thought about it because I was kind of studying MSU and U of M, but I think Eastern really needs to have a turnaround season. They've been kind of trending down, which is not what Eagles fans are used to, not what I'm used to. I'm used to having Eastern being really good and be a foil for the Cats and Grizzlies. And They're coming off a couple bad years, or at least down years. So I look for them to start getting things right by beating um, an FCS team that doesn't really have the scholarship level of the Big Sky Conference. So I think Eastern's got to be favored, and I think they'll win.
Mark, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, a lot of what Fritz said. I mean, they're coming off those two non-playoff years after a long run of playoff appearances, and I think they're kind of tired of hearing about what's wrong with Eastern. I think they're pretty motivated to get back and get going, and it helps. If their quarterback Disparis is healthy and playing, they're a whole lot different team, and I think they should be able to open this one up with a nice win.
John, what are you thinking?
Yeah, just kind of got a little bit of what everyone's touched on beforehand. I was looking at it too, like Ian was with the run defense, and took a look at Monmouth this past season. They lost Jaden Sheridan, their 1,500 yard running back, just about, and so that's going to be a big talking point for them too. Is are they going to still be able to run the ball with Sone Ento? So it'll just be that new running back against a run defense that maybe definitely in the past hasn't lived up to what they want.
All right, moving on to the next game, Sacramento State versus San Jose State. We have any thoughts on this game? I know Sacramento State is maybe not a team we're familiar with, but we're going to try to do a better job of covering all teams this year. So let's start with you on that one, John.
Yeah, I think this was going to be a lot similar to how Sacramento State opened up the season last year, just without the fire, I guess, under the players' butts of going up against Troy Taylor and your former coach. But you're still in the Bay Area. You're facing an FBS opponent. It's the time to show your face in the area, and it's a good opportunity to get a win.
Yeah, Mark, what are you thinking?
Yeah, like John said, Sac State beat Stanford last year, and Stanford was so depressed by that they left the conference and joined the ACC. So I don't, I don't know what San Jose State's going to do. If what they're going to do. They're a good Mountain West team. They are a good team. Sac State's obviously got a good shot at that, but at winning this game, so that should be an interesting game, just like last year's was.
Ian, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, just kind of taking a quick look at San Jose State. I don't think they've announced who their quarterback is going to be for this year yet, or at least who's going to be starting. New look team, new look coach, so it's kind of hard to take a look. Um, and I'm just kind of excited to see Sacramento State's defense. I think it was 10 of their 11 leading tacklers are gone from last year. So I'm excited to see how that's going to fare against an FBS team. But I do think Sac State definitely has a shot at winning that game.
Okay. And Fritz, finish us off.
Yeah, Andy Thompson's an old Grizz linebacker, and he moved up from D coordinator to be the head coach at Sac State when Troy Taylor left. And man, that's probably the signature win, was knocking off Stanford right off the bat. He's got a strong defensive mind. Troy Taylor called him one of the smartest guys he's ever been around. So he's got some work to do on that side of the ball. He's got Caden Bennett back, a quarterback who's a talent. And I don't know if they can pull off that upset 2 years in a row, but yeah, where does Cal go? What conference does Cal go to if they get knocked off? So anyway, no, I'll pick the San Jose State Spartans in this one.
Okay, while we're on that topic, before we move on to the big slate of games we have on Saturday, I'm going to want your guys' picks from those two matchups on Thursday. So, Fritz, you got San Jose State winning that game?
Yep, I'll take Eastern and San Jose State.
All right, Ian, what are your picks?
Yeah, I'm also going to go Eastern. I would like to pick Sac State. I don't think they're going to be able to. I think they have a shot, but I'm going to stick with San Jose State for my pick there.
Mark?
Yeah, I got to agree with those two, Eastern and San Jose State.
And John?
I'd like to be original, but I'm going to have to go Eastern and San Jose State as well.
Well, folks, I hope this is not a sign of the times, because I already had my picks written down before we got this podcast going, and it looks like it's a clean sweep. We all are in agreement, 10-0, with our 5 picks for those 2 games. So hopefully for these next slate of games, we have a little more originality to it. But playing a lot of FCS teams, so you would expect things to go the way they do. But let's get into what to expect for the rest of the conference. at the end of this week, we'll have everybody in the Big Sky playing at least one game. Or any of these matchups for this week in the Big Sky Conference, or any of those teams have any hope of maybe being an FCS upset alert, or is there a certain game on the slate of schedule that you're really looking forward to, something that you think is going to be a sign of the times for the future, anything like that? So, Fritz, let's start this one off with you.
Well, I thought I think UC Davis is going to be pretty good this year, so I'm interested in that game at Cal. But other than that, it seems very straightforward. There's some money games in there. Portland State going to Wazoo. I don't see that going very well. Northern Colorado going to Incarnate Word. Incarnate Word's been pretty good, especially on offense for a couple of years. Been a playoff team, and the Bears have not. And Oregon State, they beat Montana State, which is a very good team, badly a couple of years ago. And now they get Idaho State, which is trending up, but not ready to take on a Pac-2 team, as we call it now. And you know, Weber State's. I just never know how they're going to be from year to year. Sometimes it seems like they're really building something, then they take a step back, and they have to go to UW. So everything seems pretty straightforward. I'm really interested to see how Missouri State and Montana plays out Saturday night, and I'll be at that one. But I think it's all pretty straightforward, with this possible exception of Davis playing at Cal.
Mark, what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was looking at Missouri State and Montana, and first you think that Missouri State 4-7, Montana coming off what Montana did. Then you look, Missouri State had some pretty good games last year in their conference. They lost 35-17 to South Dakota State. Then got beat up a little bit by North Dakota State, but they played them pretty tough. So I would think they would be pretty competitive against Montana. I don't know, may see how they adjust to that atmosphere. Montana's going to have a new quarterback, so that could be a game that gets interesting.
John, what do you think?
Yeah, I kind of one touch was in the same idea as Fritz with the UC Davis. I think that could be interesting. If you had to have me pick one of those games of FBS versus FCS that the FCS team would pull the upset, I think that would be the one that I would go with. But other than that, I'm mainly just kind of interested in that Montana Missouri State game as well, just trying to see what the Grizzlies are able to do, change up at quarterback. That last season in the early season, they didn't play very well. It took that loss to NAU to really kind of spur a change. So just to see how they get off if they get off onto the right foot this year.
All right, Ian, what about you?
Yeah, I know you wanted it. We're looking for a little more originality, but unfortunately, it's gonna have to wait a little more. I'm also kind of looking at that UC Davis and Cal game, mostly just because Cal has to go across the country to play Auburn the week after. Potential look ahead maybe, but I mean it's first game of the year, so maybe not. But just something to keep an eye on. Obviously, it's going to come down to stopping Jade Knott, who is very talented running back. I think around 1,300 yards last year and 1,200, or not 1,200, 12 touchdowns. So that'll be a key factor in that one.
All right, that UC Davis and Cal game also stood out to me. The other game I'm kind of interested in is Cal Poly San Diego State. I think Cal Poly might surprise San Diego. I don't think San Diego's a powerhouse by any means, but as far as the matchups go, besides the teams that we all think are favored, I think from what I've seen, Cal Poly might be a good team to look out for as someone who could surprise a bigger team. But that'll lead us into this week's picks of the slate of games that we have on Saturday. Last week we had Ian and John both correctly picked MSU. I think Mark got influenced by Fritz because he was leaning MSU until Fritz spoke up. But me and Fritz were on New Mexico all day, so we definitely took that loss. But Ian, let's kick us off this week with your picks and who we got for Big Sky.
Yeah, I'll just rip right through them. I've got Washington State taking down Portland State, NAU defeating Lincoln, Cal beating UC Davis, although I do think that one's going to be a pretty close game. Oregon State defeating Idaho State, Incarnate Word taking down Northern Colorado, Oregon beating Idaho, Cal Poly winning at San Diego, Montana defeating Missouri State, Montana State defeating Utah Tech, and UW defeating Weber State.
All right. John, it's on you.
Yeah, I'll go down that line. I've got Washington State picking up the win. I've got Northern Arizona. I too have Cal, even though I do think that's going to be an interesting game. Oregon State, I don't see them having a problem with Idaho State. Incarnate Word, they've, like Fritz mentioned, been a playoff team recently. They look good. Um, I don't think Idaho is going to have any chance with Oregon. No offense to the Vandals. I've got San Diego beating Cal Poly in that one. I think that one's going to be a pretty good game, but just how the Pioneer League is with limited scholarships, I think that is what could be the difference for Cal Poly in that game, though. I have Montana and Montana State both winning, and then I've got Washington also.
All right. Mark, what are yours?
I was looking at Portland State, Washington State, and Portland State won at Washington State back in 2015. I think they played one since, and WSU has blown them out that time and the time before they played them. So I don't think WSU. I mean, WSU should win that one. I know they have a new quarterback and stuff, so there'll be some growing pains there, but they should still win that one. NAU should win. Cal, I remember from last year playing Idaho. Idaho played really well against Cal until Cal kind of took over late. I think they'll just do this. They should be able to do the same to UC Davis. Incarnate Word, they'll, if they had Cameron Ward back, maybe, that they would be even better, but they should be able to beat Northern Colorado. The Oregon State game, I was going to mention Giovanni McCoy, former Vandal, named starting quarterback at Oregon State for this game. So he'll finally get to play Idaho State because the last 2 years the Vandals played him, he was hurt, and Jack Lane took over. Those were the two games that he played in basically the last 2 years. So anyway, Oregon will win that. I got Cal Poly over San Diego, Montana winning, Montana State winning, and whoever's still on the Huskies should be enough to beat Weber State.
All right. Fritz, bring us home.
All right. Well, I only have one road team winning, and that's Montana State winning at Utah Tech. I'll pick the San Diego Toreros to beat Cal Poly even, just because Cal Poly just seems down, and post Ralph Ellerson, they just haven't been the same program. And turning back to Montana, I think there's a little bit of Montana flavor on Missouri State. The head coach is married to former Arkansas coach Bobby Trino's daughter. One of the running backs for he got like 7 carries for the Grizz last year. He took off, hit the transfer portal, and he wound up with Missouri State with the Bears this year, Iverson Young, and I think they have a safety that played for the Grizz too. That's now with Missouri State, Dylan Simmons. Not sure who the quarterback is. They have a really good running back. Missouri State does. So I'm looking forward to see how he does, how he tests the Grizz defense. It's had to reload. I know the Grizz are always good at linebacker and safety because it's always well stocked with tough Montana kids at those positions. And beyond that, I think Bobby talked about football generally today, meaning Bobby Houck. They had a press conference today. I think it lasted about 9 minutes, and then off they went. He had very little to say about Missouri State, except that he thought they would be pretty good, very good in the MVC, which is where South Dakota State and North Dakota State have been so good for so long. So looking forward to that. I think MSU going to Utah Tech. Utah Tech had some really bad lopsided losses last year. Now they have a new coach. So Brent Vigen's kind of going into that a little bit blind. But they've got 3 of their top 5 receivers back, I think. So a little tough test. It'll be another hot game for the Bobcats, but I think they'll pull it off. So that's it. You just go down the line. I've got MSU winning on the road, and everybody else, which is 8 games on Saturday, the home team. And that's what I'm going with.
All right. So we did have a couple of curveballs in there, but I'm kind of on the same page as everyone else. I got Washington State, Northern Arizona, Cal, Oregon State, UIW, Oregon. I'm taking Cal Poly. I'm sticking with that. That's my one kind of upset for the week. Montana State, and UW. Got to go with the home team on that one. Sorry, guys. But that wraps up for this week of Big Sky Now podcast. I want to thank my panel as always. Looking forward to next week's recap when we have a lot more games to dive into, a lot more stuff to talk about, and we'll be already in week 2 and seeing how our picks are looking. So thanks again for everyone for joining us for the daily Interlake and Hagedorn Sports Network. I've been your host, Josh Amick. Thank you for my panel.